Today we're going to talk about the beauty of Torah as an inspiration for Chanukah. If we take a look at the two sides of Al-Hanisim, which we say in Shemona Esrei and also in Birchas Hamazon in benching, we see the text of these two enemies of the Jewish nation, the way the Anshe Knesset HaGdolah, the men of the Great Assembly, describe them. They're quite different. The exile of Greece, which is Yavon, and that of Poras Umadai, Persia, which, as we know, was Haman in Shushan. Let's start with Purim, and then you'll see straight away the difference between Purim and Chanukah. The decrees of Haman, Bikesh lahashmid, laharoig, ula'abeid es kol haYehudim minav ad zokein taf v'noshim b'yom echad. An early day Holocaust. An early day final solution. When Haman decided, he stood up with great arrogance and he decided lahashmid, to destroy, laharoig, and to kill, and to wipe out every Jewish person from child to an old person, women as well. An early day final solution. Just as a point of interest, I remember I was once with a great Talmud Chochem, a student of the writings of the Vilna Gaon. We went together to the British Museum in British Library in London, and we wanted to trace where a certain river, which the Vilna Gaon mentions in some of his writings, and we didn't know where exactly the river was, and we went to the section of the writings of the Vilna Gaon, and the girl behind the counter told us that there's only one place you could possibly find where this river is near Vilna. If you go down to the maps of the Third Reich, they'll probably have the maps there and you'll be able to discover it. So we went downstairs, and true enough, they pulled out the maps of the Third Reich, and it was astonishing. Immediately we found the river next to Vilna, which the Vilna Gaon had referred to. But what was so horrific was that every sheet which was pulled out had a swastika at the bottom, and each shtetl, each village, and each city had a number next to it. The number of Jews living in each community, and the bottom right-hand corner, they were all added up, and it said a number of how many Jews had to be lo yaleinu, exterminated. Shem Yerachim. The thoroughness of Hitler. He was a descendant. He was a student of Haman, you see, from the first degree. But that was Haman. That was Persia. That's a different agenda. If you look at the side of Al-Hanisim of Yavon, it's quite different. Malchus Yavon Horeshah. Now we're dealing with the Greek Empire, with Hellenism. And their plan, their decree was lahashkichom toirasecha ulahaviram mechukei rotzonecha, to make the Jewish nation forget the Torah, your Torah, ulahaviram mechukei rotzonecha, and to remove them from following any of your statutes, of your will, what you want, of Rotzain Hashem, what Hashem wants from the Jewish nation. Quite different. Doesn't sound so hard, doesn't sound so harsh or persecuting. It's lahashkichom toirasecha. It sounds quite intellectual. It sounds milder than the side if we look at Haman. Maybe we can explain it in the following medrash. In the beginning of the creation, the Medrash in Bereshis brings down, Medrash Rabbah, that there were 4 rivers which came out of Gan Eden. Pishain and Gichoin, Chidekel and Poras. And the Medrash explains the name between each one represented. One of the explanations, the commentaries in the Medrash, is that it refers to the 4 periods of exile which the Jewish nation will go to. Pishain refers to Bovel, Poshu b'Farorov. They were like bulldozers. They demolished Nebuchadnezzar. Poshu, they harassed and they destroyed. They were master destroyers. Poshu of the Beis Hamikdash. Gichoin refers to Persia, to Haman, and the expression gichon comes from the words al gechonos selech, on your belly you will crawl, which is like a snake. It was like a serpent, insipid, hidden, with an agenda. As we know, the Megillah explains that it was called, the Medrash says, an alila gedola, a great cunning. Haman, as we know, made the banquet and forced all the Jewish nation to come, and as a result of that the Jews came, and because of that Haman's decree came out, because they benefited, they enjoyed the banquet which Achashverosh had made. So we see that this was more insipid, this was more cunning, the cunning of Haman. Chidekel, the Medrash says, is Yovan, is Greece, because the decrees of Greece were chad v'kal, sharp and light. I'll explain in a minute what that refers to. And Poras is Edom, because Poru, Hifriu, the assimilation, they mixed up, they confused, they caused the Jewish nation to be disintegrated. That's Edom, that's America in our times, the assimilation of the Jewish nation, Lo Aleinu. Let's come back to what we're dealing with tonight is Yovan, which is Chad and Kal, sharp and light. What does that mean? Why does this apply to the Greek Empire and the goddess of exile of Hellenism? What was behind it? What is it referring to? We can perhaps explain with a medrash, with a posuk, when Noach was shikar after he came out, he was drunk after he came out of the ark of the Teva. Ham came in and did his damage, and then Shem and Yophes, the two second sons, came in and covered him up, and because they covered his embarrassment when Noach was lying there, Noach gave a brocha, and he said to Yefes, Yaft Elokim leyefes, you will have beauty, v'yishkaim ba'ohalei Shem, and you will live in the tents of Shem. As we know, Shem was the Jewish nation. What's this blessing? What is this bracha which Yovan received, the blessing of Yofi, of beauty? The Medrash explains that Yovan was blessed with nimusim, fankesim, veloshaim. Nimusim means Greek culture, Greek elegance. Fankesim means Greek drama, circuses, and of course Loshain is the Greek language, which was beautiful, a beautiful language. The beauty of Yovan is described as being chad v'kal, chidekel, sharp and light. What does this mean? What's it referring to? I once remember hearing from my Brevda, Zecher Tzadik Livrocha, he once explained that as a moshel, as a parable of how do we describe what's the great merit, the attribute of a top surgeon, of a doctor in a hospital. He's able to get in and get out, and you don't know he's been there. He's sharp and light. And that's what the problem is with the Gezeros of Yovan. They were sharp and light. The elegance, the drama, the sport, Greek architecture, Greek intellectualism, Greek music. There is a certain allure of it, the elegance of Greece, and that's the meaning of the words chad v'kal, sharp and light. Before you know it, they've got in, and they've caused you to assimilate and lose the kedusha and lose the beauty, which we'll see in a minute, of what the Torah asks from us, which is different, quite different from the Greek ideology of what beauty is. The Gemara in Megillah, in Daf Ches Amud Aleph, explains that Chazal allowed a Sefer Torah to be translated, believe it or not, into Greek. Why? Because the language was so beautiful. The Gemara in Baba Kama Daf Pei Daled Amud Aleph explains that Rabbi Yehonason allowed people to talk in Greece because the language was so beautiful. There is something of very unique beauty which the Greek language had. But for our understanding of what Al-Hanisim was referring to, and the basis of the difficulty of the Greek exile of Hellenism, that is the point. They were sharp and they were light, and consequently one would lose the standards of Kedusha because of the appeal and the elegance of the culture of Greece. And that's where the danger came in. We should really look at the other side as well, from the brocha of Noach, which he gave Shem and Yafes, and that is that it's also the chokhmah of Greece. Rabbi Chaim Friedlander explains in his Sefer Sipsei Chaim that the Yovon, the letters Yud, Vav, and Nun, are very similar to Yoina, which is a dove, Yud, Vav, Nun, Hey. But Yovon is in the masculine, and Yoina is an expression of feminine. The Jewish nation are compared to a dove. Yoinosi b'chagvei hasela, my dove behind the rock. Klal Yisrael have the attribute of being similar to a Yoina. What's the difference between Yovon and Yoina? And he explains in his Sefer, in his writings on Chanukah, Rabbi Chaim Friedlander, Zecher Tzadik Livrocha, that the Greek national emblem is an olive, which is intrinsically brilliant, the light of an olive oil, which is brilliant, which is perfect. The emblem of the Jewish nation is a menorah. Greece is an olive, and the Jewish nation is a menorah. A menorah receives the oil, but itself is nothing unique in light. A receptacle of light, but not necessarily that one holds it. What's the point? What are we learning from this? What's the difference between the two? And this is the intrinsic difference between the wisdom of the Greek culture and the wisdom of Shem, which is the Torah Kedosha. The Rambam, in Moira Nevuchim, Chelek Beis, the Rambam describes that the wisdom of Aristotle was so prolific, was so profound, that it was almost as close as it was to possibly get through the chokhmah of Teva, through the greatness of the sciences and astrology and political science and all the different cultures of Hellenism. It was the closest you can possibly get to Nevuah, to Ruach HaKodesh. It doesn't get there, but it's the closest. So says the Rambam in Moed Nevuchim. Meaning, the enticement of Greek culture is chad and kal, is sharp and light. It pulls you in. The Olympics, exactly that. The sport. Greek drama. Royal opera. Glyndebourne in England, a festival, the Royal Festival Hall. Music, culture, science, education, buildings, dramas. All these are aspects which are chad and kal, which are sharp and light, which are very exciting, almost enticing in their intellectual brilliance. But if you're not careful, it gets in and you can lose your kedusha if you become too involved in the aspects of Greek culture. As we know, university life, all the students who go to university, many of them, lo yaleinu, chas v'shalom, enormous tragedy, become assimilated and almost lose all their Jewish identity once they go to university because of the captivating science and debates which you have in university, and it pulls you in, but it's not Torah. It doesn't have Kedusha to it. I remember myself when I was growing up, I had a close friend who we used to learn together on Shabbos afternoon, and he was brilliant at languages. He knew virtually every language, French, Italian, German, Spanish. He was outstanding in languages, and he won a scholarship to Oxford University. I remember the first semester after he came back, already he didn't wear a kapel anymore. The second one, I never ever saw him again. After the third 3 years, he was gone, he was finished, he was completely assimilated, a tragedy. He was caught up into the university life, and it was all over. His neshama was just almost covered up completely from all the excitement of a university life, but he lost it all. That's the tragedy of the sharp and light decrees of Greece. I remember at the Levaya, the funeral of Moshe Feinstein on Purim in Machane Yehuda in Yerushalayim, and we waited until Rav Shach came, Rosh Hashiva Ponovich, to give a hesped, a funeral oration for the great Posek of Moshe Feinstein. And when he came, This is what he said. He explained how the greatest tragedy in Klal Yisrael, in the Jewish nation previously, always used to be, we used to be afraid of the bitter inquisitia, the bitter inquisition. But now times have changed. And he explained that now in Klal Yisrael we're concerned about the Zisa Inquisitia, the sweet inquisition. And that's the meaning of the Olympics and sport and theatre and cinema and music and all the movies, and it's all Greek behind it all, with no reference whatsoever of spiritual aspects of holiness or kedusha or Torah whatsoever. That's the meaning of lahashgicham toirasecha ulahavira mechukei rotzeinecha. Therefore, what is the difference here? What is the problem with the exile? What is the persecution here? Maybe we can look at it in this line. What would the Greek culture have said about Bovel, Nebuchadnezzar, or for that matter, the Arabs as well? What would they have called them? A Greek would have turned around and said, they're bulldozers. Why destroy something which is intrinsically brilliant and beautiful, which the Beis HaMikdash was? Just go for the lifeline of the Jewish nation, which is what? That's what the meaning is. The lifeline of the Jewish nation is not the building, it's not the body, but take out the spiritual and you can keep everything else. As we know, the Greek exile never meant to destroy the Beis HaMikdash, but just to pull away the Torah, Shabbos, Bris Milah, Rosh Chodesh, learning Torah, because they realized that this was the lifeline of the Jewish nation. Once you pull that away in Greek ideology, then you've got nothing left, and that's the Greek culture. Nothing there. There's no spiritual side to it. Chazal explain, I think Friedlander brings down in his Sefer, the gematria of Yovon is 66, and the gematria of Galgal, a wheel, is 66. Meaning that on a wheel there's nothing up or down, or right or left. There's no shamayim, there's no gehinnom. There's nothing right or wrong, it's just a wheel continually turning. Nature just keeps on moving, but it doesn't have any spiritual side to it. There's no reward afterwards in Olam Haba, Tchias HaMeisim, there's no gehinnom. It's just life is natural and continues that way. That's the basis of Greek culture. It's very dangerous, perhaps even more dangerous than La'ashmid la'arog ul'abed es kol ha'Yehudim. It's quite different. I remember once, years ago, I was in a certain place at a certain time. You don't know you're in a certain place, you don't know why, but I saw the great American music conductor, Leonard Bernstein, give a class to young conductors on how to conduct a piece of music. And he chose a piece of music by Vivaldi, I think it was, of the Seasons, and he was teaching them how do you guide your orchestra, the young conductors, to play this piece of music which was spring. And he ingeniously told them, you must tell all your orchestra before they play this piece of music, no one should pick up any instrument whatsoever until you first close your eyes and imagine going out on a spring morning, early in the morning, and the sun has just come up, and the sun is shining, and the birds are singing, and the flowers are beautiful. Now, he said, pick up your violin and fiddle that into the fiddle, and play that on the clarinet, and play that on the piano. In other words, the zest of life you must put into the orchestra, and that will be done with an imagination. It was ingenious, and the conductors loved the idea. In other words, that you need an imagination first to play a piece of music which is about spring. I was watching it, and I remember I was enthralled by the idea, but then at the same time I realized how tragic, how sad. Bernstein was a Jew. If he really would have recognized what's behind nature and spring, he would have gone further, but he didn't know about this. if you would have told the violin, now pick up the violin and play the piece of music to the one who created the spring, who made the birds sing, the one who brought out the sun in the morning. And that's the real music. That's what the Leviim did in the Beis Hamikdash. It's not enough just to play to nature. You didn't go back enough. You didn't go to the source. He never had that source. That jugular, that lifeline of spiritual basis to everything that we have, especially in nature, was missing by him. He was an assimilated Jew, unfortunately. And that's the tragedy. The difference between the chokhmah, the wisdom of Greece, and the wisdom of Klal Yisrael is exactly as we portrayed earlier. The Greek ideology is teva and brilliant as an olive oil in itself, with no source, with no reference, with no comeback to where it all comes from. There's the tshuva of the Rosh, which is brought down in Klal Nun Hey, and the Rosh explains the chokhmah of Torah comprehensively, from beginning, from Aleph to Tov, is all on the basis of that we received the gift of the Torah at Sinai, at Mount Sinai. And that's where the chokhmah of Torah is. It's not that we are brilliant, and that's what we mean in the morning. Ato chonein le'odom das umelamed le'enash bina. Choneinu me'itucho deo bina v'haskel. That's what we ask for. We ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu to favor us, to give us. It's not that we hold the chokhmah. Asher nosan lanu es Torah. He gave us the Torah. And that's the meaning of the difference between the chokhmah of Shem, of Yoves, which is brilliant, which is intrinsically shines, but it's not a recipient, it's a Yovan. It's not a Yaina. It's not a Menorah. It's just brilliant by itself. Maybe we can explain the most beautiful distinction made in the Chassam Sofer. The Chassam Sofer was once asked a question. It's in the Tshuvos of the Chassam Sofer. What bracha do you say over a great scientist who is Jewish? Like, for example, if you would have seen Albert Einstein, what bracha do you make? The basis of the question was like this. We know that in Shulchan Aruch, in Orach Chaim, the Shulchan Aruch explains that if you see a great Talmid Chacham, then the bracha which is said is Asher Cholak Mechochmosoi Lireov, who divided, who gave a part of his wisdom to those who fear him. If you would see, for example, Isaac Newton, or Rembrandt, or Beethoven, who was a genius, a non-Jew, then you would have said a bracha Asher Nosan Mechochmosoi Lebosav Adom, who gave from his wisdom to a flesh and bone. What's the difference? The difference is, by a Jew, it's called a chelek, a part, and it's given to someone with yira, reishis chochma, yiras Hashem. The yiras shamayim is the first stage in wisdom, the recognition that it comes from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And then the wisdom is discussed, but only on that basis. Baruch atah Hashem, choynei nadoras. And therefore it says Asher Cholak, he has a chelek. And therefore, if you would see a great Talmid Chacham, if you would have seen the Chafetz Chaim, or you would see the Vilna Gaon, you would say Asher Cholak Mechochmosoi. By a non-Jew, Asher Nosan. Nosan means it's a gift, with no connection from where the wisdom came from. It's just something you received as a gift, but it doesn't show where it came. Cholak refers to that it's a part of a whole. And the whole is, of course, by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. By them, by the non-Jews, it's not like that. It's a gift. Asher nosa mechochmosoi lebosav adom. There's no yiras shamayim. There's no fear of God in it. And therefore, the Chassam Sofer said, if you would have seen an Albert Einstein, you would make no bracha. Because by a Jew, it's intrinsically only the wisdom that he has as a recognition of the yiras shamayim, which unfortunately he didn't have, Einstein. And that's the difference here between the wisdom of Yavon and the wisdom of Shem, of the Jewish nation. The two gifts were beauty and wisdom. we've explained the beauty, the nimusim, the manners, the circuses, the language, the Olympics, the body, especially the body, and the science and the drama. That's the yofi on the outside, but there isn't anything inside. There's great wisdom, but there's nothing behind it all. It's a shell, it's a galgal, it's a yovan, but not a yoina. Doesn't recognize, and therefore the beauty and the wisdom of Torah is quite distinct from that of yovan. And that is the nature of the Greek exile when we say lahashkicham toirasecha ulahaviram mechukei retzonecha. They wanted to take away that lifeline because that's the jugular. That's the way the Jewish nation survive. It's not by becoming wizards or geniuses. It's because of the Reishis Chochmah Yiras Shamayim which is behind it. The recognition that it comes from the Almighty. And that's the uniqueness of the Jewish nation. Mamleches Kohanim, the Goy Kadosh. The Kedusha, the holiness, comes from the aspect of the Yiras Shamayim before it, the fear of HaKadosh Baruch Hu behind it. Maybe we can explain this from the Luach, on the parshas which we are always involved with when it comes to Chanukah. If you look carefully, every single year, when it comes to Chanukah, we are involved with Yosef HaTzadik. Joseph. Yosef was blessed, as we know, with tremendous beauty. Yefei Toya v'Toivas Mare. His mother was also like that. Rochel, Yefei Toya v'Toivas Mare. The Arizal explains that Yosef was a Yosaim. He became an orphan. And the Rosh Tevos of Yosaim are Yefei Toya v'Yefei Mare. His mother died, but the meaning of Yosaim, says the Arizal, is that almost the profile of Yosef was beauty. His greatest test was beauty. The brothers, Heim lo hikiruhu, they recognized him. They didn't understand who he was. They thought he was a chasad das, maybe like a hippie, or someone who's looking after his hair, his beauty. But they didn't see behind it. Hardly anybody saw behind it. Why? Because Yosef was a very hidden entity. On the outside, especially in his younger years when he was in the house of Yaakov, he was Yefei Toya v'Yefei Mare, a very good-looking person. But they didn't see, the Zohar brings down, Omar Pinchas, Miyoim she'ola al daitoi. From the time that Yosef was a child, became a thinking child, a 3 or 4 year old, ad yoim moisai, says the Medrash. Rabbi Pinchas brings down, until the day Yosef died, lo poskom mimenu ruach hakodesh. He never lost any ruach hakodesh. His kedusha remained in all the difficulties that Yosef went through in Mitzrayim. And maybe it's worthwhile just to have a look, and you'll see the point of this man with great beauty, with great intelligence. But behind it all, perhaps that's the match for Chanukah every year. On the one hand, we have Yovan, with all the external trimmings of beauty, but Yosef is the shidduch, the match that we put together on the parsha every year. It's Vayeshev, Miketz, those are the parshas of Chanukah. But what I want to show is how it actually worked out with Yosef. I want to take different scenes, and you'll see the point of how Yosef always, in every scenario, brought down the Shekhinah into the room at the time, into the events at the time. Every domestic scene, he came to the house of Potiphar. Sar hatabochim, vayhi Hashem es Yosef, and Hashem was with Yosef. Vayhi ish matzniach, vayaki Hashem itoi. Even Potiphar recognized. V'chol asher hu oiseh, Hashem matzliach darkoi. Mephoshim explain that this Yud-Kei Vav-Kei is Kodesh Kadoshim here. Yosef, as we know, his presence in Egypt created a whole code of practice of morality for the Jewish men. So when she went down to Parai, and Yosef in Mitzrayim was like the Kodesh Kadoshim there. The first step was that looking after the management, the administration of the fields, of the house, of the business affairs, the stocks and shares of Potiphar, always Hashem itoi, and he kept on mentioning Hashem's name. When he came to the enticement of the wife of Potiphar. We're told in the Torah, he didn't just say no to the lady. He didn't just rebuttal away and say, no way, I can't do this with you. There was a reasoning behind it. And he refused, and he says, I can't do this with you. It's true, there's no one here in the house at the time. But lady, there's someone else in the room here with me, with you, and that's why I can't do it. Why? Says Yosef to the Eishes Potiphar, no, I can't. He says that he had reasons why he didn't want to do it. He brought Hashem into the scenario. I can't do it. Because there's one extra person here, and that's one too many. I can't do it with you. It's not two, it's three people here. That's why we always call him Yosef HaTzadik. HaTzadik is a person, the Shulchan Aruch in the beginning says, Shivisi Hashem lenegdi Tomid, the person who brings HaKadosh Baruch Hu into his life. That's what Yosef did. Yosef HaTzadik. He brought the Kedusha there. He recognized with all his beauty and all his genius. As we know, all the girls, Rashi brings down in Pashas Vayechi, that they all threw their bracelets and diamonds and jewelry onto the wagon just that Yosef would pick up his eyes and look at them. He was a handsome person and brilliant in his strategy and economics of how to run the country. A genius. He had all the skills of Yavon, the Yofi and the Chochmah, but behind it is the Yiras Shamayim. Take a stage further. Look a little bit further when he was taken into the prison. In Perek Lamed Tes, he was in the prison by Hashem es Yosef, even in the prison, with all the, in the dungeon there. And he found chen in the eyes of the Sar HaBeit HaTzoya. And the Pasuk says, Mefurish, B'asher Hashem itoy, B'asher hu oiseh Hashem matzliach. Once again, it's not just a handsome man with an outstanding brain. Hashem itoy. Take a look a little bit further when he's called to Paroi to interpret the dreams. Again, we find that the way he answered Paroi, Bayan Yosef espar v'leima biladai. I can't do anything to help you. I'm afraid it's not me. Elokim yan es shalom Paroi. Once again, every scene with Yosef, when he revealed himself to his brothers, Hashem sent me here, and when Yaakov died, Hasachas Elokim oni, am I instead of HaKadosh Baruch Hu? There's a certain lesson which we're supposed to derive, perhaps, between Yosef and the Pashas of Chanukah. And the lesson is that this beauty had much behind it. It wasn't just the beauty by itself. There's a beautiful explanation given by the Chayzer Milublin. All the pastures of the winter, he said, are wearing a fur coat. It's cold. Yaakov with the Nezid Adoshim. Yosef was very handsome. What's going on here? What's behind the scenes here? Yaakov with the flock, with Lavan, the Akudim Nakudim. What's going on? You can't understand what's happening unless you look deep into the Medrash and understand what's going on behind it all. Otherwise you'll just think that Yaakov was a swindler and Yosef was a hippie, and you won't get the point. There's behind the beauty is the Yiras Shamayim behind it all. And that perhaps is the match that we're supposed to take